On this episode of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, join me, Belinda Brady, as I discuss the Saturday afternoon down at the shops that turned into an absolute bloodbath. You won't want to miss this episode coming up right after this. Hi everyone, welcome to Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans. I am your host, Belinda Brady, and welcome guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. You're all so appreciated. And welcome to this episode simply titled The Strathfield Massacre. And I think that is pretty self-explanatory. But before I go into anything else about this episode, I need to cite my sources, which is www.dailytelegraph.com.au, www.smh.com.au, www.monumentaustralia.org.au, murderpedia.org, trove.nla.gov.au, thebigsmoke.com.au, and that is it, guys. And what am I drinking? Well, I'm drinking my stock standard black coffee with vanilla syrup. And I think, as I said in the last episode, I'm finding it really hard to find the quirky and different coffee syrups that I'm liking at the moment. So vanilla it is. Now, a real quick shout out to you listeners out there. I've had a few more people join me from all over the world. I've got people from North Carolina, Hawke's Bay region, Florida, Texas, and Brussels. Yay for Brussels. And of course, I've got people in Australia like Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and I've got people in Auckland as well. Hi guys, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Now, as we know, thank you for lending me your ears. And if you are settling in for a chill out with a podcast and a drink, I hope you've got something good that you like to drink. I hope you've got something caffeinated. If you are joining me on your way to work or the gym, or if you're at the gym, if you're driving, wherever you are, thank you for your company, and let's get right into the episode. Crime Scenes and Coffee Beans, the Strathfield Massacre. Now, Saturday afternoons are a great thing, aren't they? I mean, you can decide how little or how much you want to do. And for a good majority of us, our Saturday afternoon includes having lunch out or shopping or catching up with friends for a coffee or two. And on a winter's afternoon on the 17th of August 1991, many Australians were doing just that. And many Australians who lived in or around a New South Wales suburb called Strathfield, they were doing that as well. And in a shopping centre called Strathfield Plaza. Now, Strathfield is a suburb in New South Wales in the inner west of Sydney, and has long been a melting pot of culture and varying nationalities, and between 25,000 to 27,000 Australians call it home. It's only a short train ride away from Sydney City, but it is far enough away from the city still to be classed as being in the suburbs. So you've got the best of both worlds. And Strathfield Plaza is right next to the train station, and as you'd imagine, it is a busy hub for commuters grabbing a coffee, etc., before jumping on a train and heading off for their day. But it is also like any shopping centre, with major grocery stores, doctor surgeries and cafes, with families and locals utilising the shopping centre for their needs. And in 1991, this was no different. And on a chilly August afternoon, folks were out and about shopping and catching up with their friends and family. The day was the 17th of August 1991, winter in Australia, and like right in the chunk of winter, right in the midst of it. And though it was cold, it was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and people were out and about taking advantage of the winter sun. Now, in a cafe called the Coffee Pot, an open and really spacious cafe that was really popular with locals, the place was brimming with people enjoying a meal or some much needed caffeine. And two young girls, one by the name of Roberta Armstrong and her friend are amongst the diners of the cafe. The girls notice the strange behaviour of the man sitting next to them, who continually turns and glares at the two girls. Now, they remember him to be stony-faced and drinking coffee, and he was sinking the coffees. He had 4 to be exact. But, teenage girls, want to just talk to each other and ignore everyone around them, so they dismiss him and continue to chat. Now, after this man finishes his 4th coffee, he gets up, he's dressed in jeans, a denim jacket and a beanie, and he gets up from his table, stands with one knee on a booth and pulls out a 20-inch Bowie knife and smiles before plunging the knife 4 times into Roberta's back. Roberta lets out a horrified scream before collapsing and dying at the table. Her terrified friend, who only seconds before had been giggling with Roberta about the strange man gawking at them, ran screaming to the counter to hide. This was at 3:35 p.m. Leaving the knife in Roberta's back, the man pulls out a rifle in his bag, which he had hidden in a large postage cylinder, so a large cylinder that you would post something in, and fires it into the air as if he was doing a test fire before aiming and firing at the cafe customers. Now, mother and daughter Joyce Nixon and Patricia Roth both die as they tried desperately to shield Patricia's kids, Kevin, who was 15, and Nathan, who was 9, from the bullets. Joyce is struck in the head twice while Patricia is shot in the back. Thanks to her and her mother's quick and heroic thinking, though, both her children managed to survive. Now, hearing screams coming from his cafe owner George Maveris, who was 51, comes out to see what is going on and is instantly shot dead. Sitting on the opposite side of the cafe are Carol Dickinson, who is 47, and her daughter Belinda, and Belinda's friend Rochelle Milburn. Rochelle starts moving towards the gunman and is shot in the head. A terrified Carol pushes her daughter Belinda behind a pot plant, and as she screams at her daughter to hide, she is shot in the chest and killed instantly. People in the shopping centre hear the guns, hear the screams, but they are still not quite sure what is going on. I mean, this is not an everyday occurrence. Your brain would be scrambling to try and work out what was going on. Some run, others freeze and watch on in terror and shock as the gunman moves towards a supermarket called Franklin's, still armed with his rifle and swinging his gun around, firing from his waist and shoulder. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point too that his gun was an assault rifle, so he didn't need to reload, he could just shoot. He shoots a woman called Helen Zhu, and I hope I have said her last name correctly, in the arm, another woman in the leg, and then shoots and kills 53-year-old Robertson Can Hock Vun, who is in the chemist, just simply watching in shock what is going on. The gunman then takes an escalator to the upper level of the car park and shoots Beulah, Patrick and Brett Linane, who managed to get away by crawling away in a pool of their own blood. The gunman then opens fire on cleaner George Sidawee, who is shot in the leg, hand, arm and stomach, but he survives. Now, Gregory Reed is just ahead of the gunman and is in the process of warning unsuspecting shoppers getting out of their cars of the impending danger, and is shot in both feet as he dives behind his car for protection. The gunman keeps shooting and he tries to gain access to the Social Security building, which is right next to the plaza, but luckily it's closed on a Saturday, and despite his attempts to shoot the locks off, he doesn't get access. Frustrated, he aims his rifle over the rooftop wall and starts firing at the taxi rank and the Strathfield train station on the ground below. Bullets injure Yong Wu and Zahu U, who run to the station's tunnel for cover. Now, again, I apologise if I have not said these names correctly. Catherine Noyes is completely unaware of what is going on at this point and drives onto the rooftop parking lot, looking for a parking spot, not knowing anything is happening, where the gunman screams at her to stop. Just out of nowhere, he appears and screams at her to stop. He puts the gun to her cheek through the passenger window and says, "Drive me to Enfield." Now, Enfield is a neighbouring suburb of Strathfield. Terrified, Catherine does exactly what the gunman says, but she only makes it one level down before the sound of police sirens fill the air. The gunman then orders her to stop, telling her, "I'm really sorry," stop, and gets out of the car. Catherine steals her chance to get away and drives off, but not before she sees the gunman kneel on the car park floor, put his rifle to his chin, and pull the trigger. It is approximately 3:45 p.m. In 10 horrifying minutes, the gunman has killed 7, injured 6, and scarred many more. In 10 short minutes, this maniac had killed 7 innocent people, all of which were not known to him, and he plunged Australia into a mourning. In 10 short, blood-soaked minutes, he destroyed so many lives. But who was he? And why did he do this? Who was the man who had taken your normal Saturday afternoon and completely destroyed it? Police very quickly found out that the gunman was a man named Wade Frankham, a 33-year-old taxi driver. But just who was he? Wade Frankham was born in 1968, and from what I could find on him, he was a bit of a loner and didn't leave the house apart from when he had to work or when he was off to visit a prostitute. Now, Wade apparently was raised with strict discipline and little to no approval from his parents, and went from dead-end job to dead-end job before landing a job as a taxi driver. And not long after, his father passed away from emphysema in 1986, and his mother, who never got over her grief, gassed herself in the car in the family's North Strathfield garage some 3 years later. When Wade inherited around $300,000 from both his parents' death, he moved into his parents' unit with her younger sister and her boyfriend. And like I said earlier, he only left a few times a week, either for work or to go see his sex workers. And one of his regulars told police after the massacre that sexual release was the major thing in his life, and if that was going to cease, that could have been catastrophic for him. His neighbours described him as a loner who was quiet and friendly, and in 1990 he started seeing a psychologist for his depression, but he stopped going in February 1991. In September of 1990, he got himself a shooter's license, and on the 16th of January 1991, 7 months before the massacre, he bought his weapon of choice, which was a 7.62mm SKS self-loading assault rifles, 100 rounds of ammo and 3 magazines from a sports store in Sydney, telling the store clerk it was for protection as it's a fucked up world out there and there's some weird fuckers out there. Now, Wade bought the Bowie knife, the one he used to kill 15-year-old Roberta by stabbing it in her back, and a set of handcuffs in April of that year, and tried and failed to have the knife professionally sharpened at a knife sharpening service in July of that year. The coroner who oversaw the inquest into the massacre said it was really clear that by the time he had purchased these weapons, he had killing on his mind. Now, the day before the massacre, Wade shaved his head and sharpened his Bowie knife himself, and newspaper reports after the massacre state that he told his sister's boyfriend, who was living with them, that he was going to wipe people out and protect himself. Now, Wade's sister at the inquest into the massacre described him as a caring person and struggled to understand why her brother did what he did. But she did say, with the stress of his childhood and the loss of both their parents, that could have possibly taken its toll. It's also worth noting that when police searched Wade's property, They found pornography, violent movies and magazines, and a well-read copy of American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Wade left no note and no reason as to why he committed mass murder. I mean, not that it mattered. 7 lives were gone, many more ruined, many more injured, and so many families now left to pick through their own grief and get on with their lives. How on earth do you have an excuse for that? You don't. As Wade had died at the massacre by his own hand, an inquest was set up which began in 1991 and had testimony from survivors and police who attended the scene. Now, do you guys remember earlier when I mentioned the man who'd been shot in both feet as he was warning others of the danger on the rooftop of the car park? His name was Gregory Reed, and he gave testimony. Gregory was in the hardware store opposite the Coffee Pot Cafe when he saw Wade stab 15-year-old Roberta Armstrong, telling the court he turned around after he had coffee, and when this girl had her back turned to him, he drove the Bowie knife straight between her shoulder blades downwards. He then pulled the rifle out of the pack and started shooting, and I went down on one knee and looked out the door, and he had fired about 6 shots. Gregory said it was at this point he saw Wade run alongside and noticed he wasn't shooting people who were lying down on the ground. Now, Gregory, who was a Vietnam veteran, made the decision to run ahead and warn as many people as he could, saving lives with his quick and selfless thinking. He told the court, "I went out of the glass doors to the car park and there were couples standing. I said, 'Quick, there's a killer behind me. Lay down on the ground and he won't shoot you.'" He then ran to the stairs of the car park, taking 3 steps at a time, trying to warn the unsuspecting people who were trying to enter the shopping mall of the madness that awaited them. And at this point, he leaned over the balcony and Wade fired 2 shots at him from down below, narrowly missing his face. Gregory managed to get around 10 people on the ground and to safety before Wade caught on to what he was doing and went up to the roof. Now, Gregory told the court he was on the rooftop out in the open telling a lady there's a killer on the loose and to get on the floor of her car when she said it's too late. He's right behind you. Gregory turned around to see Wade about 20 feet away, his rifle pointed at his head. And of this harrowing moment, Gregory said, "You can hear your heartbeat and adrenaline is going through your system because you are physically doing things you possibly couldn't do before. I looked up and saw the barrel and I thought, I'm gone. I dived to the side of my car and he fired when I was jumping through the air, and that was how I got shot in the feet." When the carnage was over, Gregory was taken to hospital where he recovered from his injuries, and a year later he was awarded the Star of Courage for saving the lives of 8 people during the rampage. The inquest also heard from New South Wales Police Commissioner Ken Moroney, who's now retired, but at the time he was filling in as acting Southwest Region Commander and recalls being met by Detective Chief Adrian Allingham at the mall's entrance. Now, Adrian warned him about what he was about to see, but Ken said, "I had seen deceased bodies, I had seen deceased murdered bodies, but notwithstanding his words to me, I couldn't have comprehended what I was about to see." He went on to recall as frantic relatives and friends and onlookers started to gather behind the police tape, begging to go in to see if their loved ones were there. He went in to see the bloodbath that Wade had left behind. "I stood there and it was almost as if time had frozen over and I couldn't comprehend the nature of the carnage. I had seen murdered bodies, but I had never seen that many in one place at one time, and all of a sudden the enormity of what had occurred started to ring home to me." Many, out of respect for the victims' families, many of whom attended the inquest, the police officer didn't go into graphic detail about the true extent of what he had seen, but he recalled Wade's victim, 15-year-old Roberta, and he remembered the family of the Coffee Pot Cafe owner George Mavris, who was also killed pleading with him to be let in to see if their loved one was still alive, saying what he had seen and what he had experienced was simply a sad and unforgettable experience. Coroner Wallace, who was overseeing the inquest, stated that Wade clearly had killing on his mind, and a doctor found he was without severe mental disorder or previous evidence of severe aggression. He proposed the reasoning behind Wade's murderous rampage could be put down to anger, guilt, and having no money left, having blown it all on prostitutes, but they alone were not significant enough to explain why he did what he did. He did, however, conclude that Wade's exposure to violence and having a vulnerable state of mind went a long way into explaining his actions. Meanwhile, as Strathfield and Australia mourned their loss, the gun debate heated up once again. Now, before the massacre, gun control was a no-go. It was a political minefield. But now it was all anyone could talk about. And, you know, it's no different anywhere in the world whenever something horrible like this happens. At the time, though, in Australia, there was no limit on how many guns you could buy, and you could own a semi-automatic with registration, and anyone, even a violent criminal, could apply for and get and own a semi-automatic. The only people who couldn't was anyone who'd been charged with murder. Anyone else, though, could legally own a weapon. You could be the worst person in the world, but as long as you didn't have murder on your rap sheet, you could own a semi-automatic. However, that changed after the Strathfield Massacre. Now, a woman by the name of Rebecca Peters, who was the coordinator of the National Coalition for Gun Control, saw the many loopholes that were being taken advantage of and questioned them repeatedly and publicly. And with the support of the public wanting stronger gun laws, change happened. The New South Wales government put out restrictions on semi-automatic gun ownership, and this kick-started the gun law reform for lethal weapons. And as of right now, semi-automatic gun ownership is restricted in Australia to only government agencies and occupational shooters. Us civilians cannot own them. Strathfield Plaza still stands where it is today, and there is a really lovely memorial there in the form of a plaque and a tree to honour those who lost their lives that awful Saturday afternoon. And I will now mention each victim by name. They were Roberta Armstrong, Robertson Can Hock Voon, Patricia Rowe, Carol Dickinson, Joyce Nixon, Rachel Milburn, and George Maveris. Murdered for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a maniac decided to act out on his murderous impulses. It's just absolutely heartbreaking and a heartbreaking part of Australian history. But it happened, and we need to talk about it, and we need to honour those who lost their lives, and we need to honour those who helped save many more. And there we have it, guys. Another episode of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans done and dusted. Thank you for your company. Thank you for lending me your ears. And you can subscribe to me. I believe it is $5 a month. For $5 a month, I will give you ghost stories as a bonus episode. Australia is a wonderfully haunted place, and if you want to hear some cool and spooky ghost stories, I am your girl. So please subscribe to me if you feel the need. You can buy me a coffee, you can send me some fan mail, you can subscribe to me on YouTube, you can comment on my videos there. I don't bite, I promise. I love hearing from you guys, and I'm also over on TikTok too. If you want to give me a follow, that would be awesome as well. That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for lending me your ears. And until next time, stay safe, stay cool, and stay caffeinated. I will catch you all later.